I try my best to pick days that there's high activity, predictability with astrology. So it was a super full blue blood moon on a New Year's Eve, and we had a little soiree here. And it was a private event where I invited just a few people that I thought could really connect to the afterlife, and it was very successful. So we were in the attic and we made contact with a slave named Gary. And he said that him and his two friends lived in the cubbyhole up in the attic, and they weren't allowed to come out of the cubbyhole because there was an evil entity that roamed this house, used Edwin as a puppet for their bidding, and also his son was 4 years old, and he said that his son was lured to the gable and jumped out the window to his death. Gary told us that his wife was here, and his wife died here from depression. That's what he said. Gary told us that he was from Florida. He told us that his last name was Hetherington, and at that time that didn't make any sense to me. But later it did, and I'll tell you why. They lived here, they worked here, they were part of the Hetherington family. The information that was coming through and the energy that was circulating was none that I've ever experienced in my life. This is the most profound paranormal activity that I had ever partaken in here at the Bellaire House. So the first rule of paranormal is don't get emotional and don't say you can come home with me. Don't ever do those two things. And guess who broke the rules? I did. I wanted Gary to be free. I did. I didn't want him to be strapped and trapped in this cubbyhole and live his eternity in a cubbyhole with his friends. That's hell. Who would? I don't want that for any human being, okay? But Gary said that he would come out, and I said, that's great. You can sleep in any room. You can eat any of the food. And I even got a paper because I wrote a paper. I said, you are free. And I left the paper in the attic. You're free. If you get too emotional inside of investigations, you could be easily manipulated. Fortunately, we had the right time, the right alignment in the sky, and we had the right energy to where nothing evil could have come through and posed as Gary to get our attention, to build the rapport of trust with us, and then take us down. I mean, because that could have happened. I mean, it really could have, but thank goodness it didn't. So a couple of months later, I'm at my apartment in St. Clairsville, Ohio. Nobody knows where I live, and this doorbell rings. And I opened the door and said, hi, my name is Gary. I want to rent the apartment below you, and I want to try to get a hold of your landlord. And I said, okay, I'll call Lainey right now. So I called Lainey and said, there's someone here that wants to rent the apartment. And he said, my wife is at Dr. Sarah's. I live right next to the Dr. Sarah who delivers babies. And he said, she's 4 months pregnant. And I was like, oh, that's wonderful. I said, so there'll be a baby in the house. And he said, yeah. So he left, and we were getting ready to take my son to bowling practice. I opened the door, and there is Gary and his wife. And she's light skinned, and you can see her little baby bump. And I said, what you guys doing? They're like, we're here to see the apartment. And I was like, that's great. Let me take you around back. So we ran back, and I showed them, and I was like, I've got to get going, but here you go. And I hope maybe we can barbecue. I can't wait to meet your baby. And Gary comes up to me, and he don't know my name, by the way. He doesn't know me. And he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Kristin Lee, my family is eternally grateful for what you've done for us. And I just said, you're welcome. It didn't hit me. It didn't hit me yet. So I went to my Jeep, and we started to drive my son to bowling practice, and then it hit me on the interstate. I was like, oh my God, that's Gary from the Bellaire House. He made it out. He made it out, but how did he get to this level to tell me in the flesh, like as a pulsating real human being, not a spirit, that he and his wife were okay, and she's pregnant, and they're starting their lives over again somewhere. So I'm like losing it, like inside of myself like this, and I'm just trying to rationalize and like debunk what just happened, and there was no way to do it. So I in my mind, I was like, he gave me his phone number. And I remember he said he was from Florida in that session. As soon as I drop Lane off, I'm gonna look up this phone number. And if it's from Florida, hands down, it's Gary, and I have to accept that. It was a Florida exchange, and I never saw him again. Never, he never moved in.